Hello viewers, and welcome to Exploring Cinema with Brian Meadows. I, of course, am Brian. So today's review is on not just one, two of the new Star Wars novels. We have Rebel Rising by Beth Revis, and then we have Guardians of the Whills by Greg Rucka. Or Rucka, it's whatever it is. But, as with my other reviews, this will be a non-spoiler review. Now, both books came out early this month. They both came out on the 2nd, I think, of May, and I didn't have time to read Rebel Rising quickly, and now I can get to that and Guardians. But the problem is, I decided I wanted to combine both because my initial review of Guardians was way too short, and I actually thought about how long the video was. It would be barely 3 minutes. That's not even worth it. So I decided I wanted to combine both. Now, the first one we will talk about is... Oh, I messed up my hair. The first one we will talk about is Rebel Rising. Rebel Rising follows the story of Jyn Erso when Saw Gerrera rescues her, and it follows her life as she's trained by Saw, and it shows her grow into the woman that she is when we meet her in Rogue One. Now, before I actually start discussing the book a bit, what is my rating? I actually enjoyed it. It was really good. Now, your enjoyment of this novel is actually based off of how much you actually care about Jyn as a character. Whether you liked her in Rogue One or you didn't really care for her. For those of you who have seen my Rogue One review and analysis, which by the way I will have in the description down below, you guys know that I felt that the characters were the weakest part of the film, and I felt the same for Jyn. Nothing was explained about why she was the way she was, but we finally get an answer in this novel. The point of the novel was to show how Jyn goes from a seemingly normal child at about age 7 or 8 to an untrusting and very jaded woman that we meet in Rogue One. As the story progresses, we are shown how her trust issues begin to grow, and to me it honestly made her feel a bit more sympathetic. As for what we are given about Jyn, we get insight into her training under Saw and how she became part of his partisans, and even why she begins to have audacity for the rebellion as a whole. For me, the most important insight, though, was how Jyn felt about her father after being rescued, because I was not sure how she felt in the film. In the actual Rogue One novelization, it is explained that she has a very low opinion of Galen before she saw his message in the movie, but we're not told why. But we do actually get the answer in the novel. Besides Jyn, we actually do get more of Saw Gerrera, and while I appreciate the history of the character, for me, Saw was one of the weakest parts of Rogue One, or at least the portrayal of him, and I did not expect to feel so much empathy and sympathy for him in this novel. One day he's called to save a family, and then ends up having to care for this little girl, and while he's doing the best that he can, and you can tell it, He expresses it through his emotions and what he's saying, but all he knows by this point is war, and he's disappointed that all he can teach her is combat. He can't teach her things like love and empathy. All he can teach her is how to fight and how to be ruthless. They have a father-daughter relationship here, and it is very obvious, but I actually loved it. I loved how every once in a while she would actually refer to her as... She would refer to him as her father. I actually really loved it. And as much as Jyn looks to Saw for approval, I felt like he actually looks to her for approval just as much. Though this is labeled as a young adult novel, the only thing that makes this feel like that kind of novel is the amount of pages that it has. There are less pages in this one than your standard Star Wars canon novel. So it's a pretty quick read. I still can't speak today. It's a pretty quick read, but that being said, I said it because this story does get pretty dark. A lot of people die in this novel, and we even get the best depiction of Saw as a terrorist and extremist that we've ever seen, because in Rebels, or not Rebels. in Rogue One and its novelization, it's basically told about how he's an extremist and how even though he's a rebel, he's not part of the rebellion. This book actually shows a reason why he's not. Saw even talks about, and I'm actually kind of paraphrasing this, but he talks about how fear controls the masses and that the Empire controls fear. So if the rebellion could tap into that fear and use the exact same tactics as the Empire, then maybe they could finally defeat the Empire, or at least show that the Empire could be defeated, and then that would usher in true peace. This is a very unique mindset for a rebel, so it was actually very refreshing to hear. That's one of the parts that I loved about the book. Before I finish this part of the review, I do have to mention one thing. I mentioned in my Thrawn review about how it showed... Excuse me. So, I talked about how certain people viewed the Empire and how the Empire viewed them. In this novel, we actually get a bit more insight into the common folk of the Outer Rim. Most of them don't see Imperial things every day, such as Star Destroyers or even Stormtroopers. So, when things show up, it's a very big deal. I love things about that. Because if you really think about it, if you see a Star Destroyer in real life and you've never seen it before, that's pretty fucking scary. To recap, I feel that the enjoyment that you get out of Rebel Rising is definitely based on how you felt about Rogue One and your view on Jyn. If you wanted more character development in the film, you'll love this book and perhaps even love the character. If you already liked or loved Jyn, then you'll be given more reasons to. Either way, I felt that this novel was something that we needed, and it was a very good read. Honestly, check it out if you're interested. Guardians of the Whills follows Chirrut Imwe and Baze Malbus, who we meet in Rogue One, you know, the Guardians of the Whills, the blind one and his buddy. I keep kicking the camera. I can't stay still. I need a fidget cube. But it follows their time right after the planet of Jedha is taken over by the Empire. So Chirrut and Baze work to protect the citizens of Jedha City and even steal resources from the Empire for them to survive, as well as those people that they're protecting. Then one day, the infamous rebel extremist Saw Gerrera, he keeps popping up in this review, just appears on the planet, and then everything changes. So, what do I give this? This was a very short read for me, barely taking maybe 5 hours at the most. The book is okay, it's not a favorite of mine, but I learned enough new material to where it felt like it was worth the read. We do get a bit of tidbits on Chirrut and the range of his abilities, but also for Baze and why he lost his faith in the first place, you know, a little bit of his origin. And we do get many good Easter eggs and canon reveals, but honestly, the novel underwhelmed me a bit. I didn't even want to finish it. It was boring. I told you guys that was short. If I didn't do it any other way, then holy crap. I would have had to spoil stuff, and I didn't want to do that. So, just to recap, really quickly, for Rebel Rising, I give blue, and then for Guardians of the Whills, I gave a red. As another quick recap, for Rebel Rising, it's a really good read, and I suggest checking it out. And then as for Guardians, you can either read it or not. It really doesn't matter. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to me ramble on and on. Now, I must ask you, what did you guys think of the novels for both Rebel Rising and Guardians of the Whills? Did you love one, hate one, love both, hate both? Were you indifferent? Have you not read one or the other? Oh, excuse me, hiccup. Where was I? Etc., etc. It doesn't matter. I want to know your thoughts. I welcome new perspectives. Be sure to check out my channel and subscribe if you haven't, just for more reviews and content. There is always more to come. And for other ways to support the channel, please check in the description down below. And like I said earlier, I will put a link to the Rogue One review and analysis that I did on an earlier date, so that you can see that as well if you haven't already. Now, farewell until the next video. May the Force be with you, always.